Hey everyone, we're live. It's good to see y'all.
Hey everyone, I'm Kevin from Mind Matrix. Thanks for joining in. So with this LinkedIn Live today, if you're watching live, feel free to go ahead and add any comments or questions over on the comment side. If you're watching the recording, put a comment down below. If you have any questions, Vaughn, Tom, myself, we can all respond back. So got a great conversation today on talking about non-traditional partnerships and channels. And we're joined by the Global VP of Channel Partnerships at Leadership Circle, Tom Harker. And then everyone already knows our host, the CRO of Mind Matrix, Vaughn Mordecai.
It's great to be here. Welcome to the Partner Matrix. So Tom, we're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Glad to have you. I was really excited to have you on the show. You're always good for a good soundbite, and it's always interesting to chat with you. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. What do you want to know?
This is gonna be fun. Let's start with, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your company, who you are, and more specifically, the role that you have in the business.
Sure. Yeah. So the company I work for currently is called Leadership Circle. We're a leadership development firm. I think we're best known for our flagship product, which is a 360-degree leadership assessment. And so we work with companies from small to large all around the world. We've been around forever. I think, yeah, we work with, we both sell directly, and we work with coaches and consultants who use our products in their business.
Mm. And then so where do you fit into all of that? Are you the biggest leader in the mix? What is it? Where do you fit in? What is your specific position there?
Yes, yeah, my position. So I'm the global vice president of channel partnerships. I was brought on 2 years ago. We have an extensive network. So we have almost 14,000 people certified in our tool, our flagship tool, who are maybe these non-traditional partners, but and we've been servicing them forever. But one of my biggest, the reason I was brought into the organization was to try to add more structure to that partnership program, to say, when we look at these people, we were doing our best, but almost, we started from a small company 25 years ago or whatever, and just kept trying to do our best for everybody. And they kind of got to a tipping point where they realized, okay, we need to add a little bit more structure here, and hence my entry into the company.
That's really cool. I have kind of a view that all of these channels and partnerships exist in business. When you take a look at some of the writing that's been done on ecosystem, the conversation started happening in the 90s. We talk about partnerships, and there are folks that are saying, partnerships are an ecosystem is having its day in the spotlight. It's curious to hear that you have 14,000 partners. It's a ton. That's a lot to unwind. So when it comes to Leadership Circle, how do you guys kind of differentiate? I know that in Utah, there are quite a few leadership companies, where it seems to be the mecca of leadership companies spinning out of that area. What makes Leadership Circle different?
Yeah, I think the thing that makes it most different, I'll tie it in from my last comment a little bit and say we have almost 14,000 people certified. Like I said, we've always tried to work together and partner for success, but without necessarily having a formal partnership program. And so there's been an evolution there. I think what sets us apart is the people that come to us really believe. So, we have a product and a tool that they use, but underneath that it really leads to change. And so part of our mission statement, so the beginning of our mission statement, I'll say, which is different than a lot of other companies, even our competitors, is that we exist to evolve the conscious practice of leadership.
Oh, wow.
And so, it's not to make money. It's not to do something else. Those are underneath that. But I'd say that's something that's felt by those that we partner with, is they come to us because they believe in the change we're trying to accomplish. And we try to redirect our focus to keep that at the forefront all the time. I'm, working at this company, we hear our mission statement repeated so frequently because we want to be reminded that needs to be part of what we do in all our discussions. And our partners hear that. They come on and we say, listen, like, this is our product that we're trying to put out in the world, but our objective is we really want to create sustainable change. We really want to improve the quality of leadership in any organization.
Wow, that's extremely aspirational. That's really interesting. So that explains your sort of business proposition, why you guys exist in the world. But when you start to jump into the coaches and the partners that you have, how does that business proposition translate to the value proposition that you offer to your partners and coaches?
Yeah, so I think the value proposition for our organization. So, like I said, our flagship offer is a 360 assessment and program called the Leadership Circle Profile. We shorthand that to LCP often, but the Leadership Circle Profile itself is an assessment that has. Let me stop and insert. Most of our competitors have a really unidimensional assessment. So
Okay.
when you come in, you go through, you will have people kind of score your leadership ability, and you come out with one score and it kind of says, this is how Vaughn is as a leader. Yeah. Something that's fundamentally different about the Leadership Circle is there's more than one dimension in your report that comes out. And so we know one of the unique things about the Leadership Circle Profile and the report that comes from it is that we expect there to be some evolution in your leadership ability, meaning what is leadership? It's not just a point in time. There's not just one measure of leadership. How do you measure the difference in a junior leader versus a senior leader? And when does one of those leaders transition from one measurement to the other? Wow. What point would you just switch? And the fundamental difference with the Leadership Circle Profile, from my perspective, is that's built into the assessment. So when you take it, because we include a couple dimensions, we talk about behaviors that we would expect you to have as a more as a more novice leader, or maybe let me say a less developed leader. And it's not that you're a bad leader, it's that it's going to showcase that you're kind of earlier on in the journey of leadership. But then built in, we have this function that allows to say, here's the kinds of behaviors and competencies we expect you to be showing up with more as you mature as a leader. And both of those are in the same report. So I could take a really senior leader from, Fortune 500 company, and they show up totally in the bottom half. And that's fine, because I just say, because here's the challenges. They're in the bottom half, but they work at a manufacturing plant, and the type of leadership that they're expected to demonstrate without any other counsel or any other input is that kind of reactionary leadership. They got to be safe, and they got to keep people coming in, and they got to hit the number, the quota for the day and whatever else. But as they evolve, I'm expecting them, and that's the conversation we'd have with that leader. But there's space for it in the same report. So I might take another leader from that same organization, and they're showing up more with the competencies of a more advanced leader, or like a more evolved, experienced leader. And they're both at the same organization. And so it's not to say that the one's stuck and the other one's not. It's that there's maybe a transition that they can be helped with, to say, here's different ways to start thinking about how you apply your leadership. And that's what we would do through coaching. And so, like I said, the people that are engaging with us in partnership, that's what they're doing for their clients, is hosting and managing those kind of consulting conversations. And so they'll use the tool, and it gives a much more dynamic overview of where someone is in leadership. And so for them, it's an amazing tool for context for those conversations to say, hey, we didn't get you back your report and it said, hey, you got an A or you got an F. It comes
Yeah.
back and it's more dynamic in that, hey, you got a B, but it's more down here. And to really move up, like, we want you to go from a B in this section to a B up in this section. And so what can we do to start influencing that kind of development?
Wow, that's really interesting. I remember the first time I found myself in a leadership position. The whole reason I was there is because I saved the day for the president and CEO of my company in a really public forum. And so I went from being just some dope on the street to having a VP position, and then expected to act like a VP when all I was just some dude that had kind of wrapped up school a few years earlier. So that kind of thing is really, really necessary, I think.
Yeah.
How do they? So you've got this platform.
Sorry, let me add, Vaughn. I think one of the important things there is when we look at that leadership. You asked what the value is for the partners. I think it's important to note that the leadership circle is different in offering that multifaceted reporting and dynamic. And I think it's important because when we look, so I'm thinking this because of your comment about your own leadership journey. But prior to joining Leadership Circle, I was at a competitor for 11 years before that, also managing partnerships. And I think an important piece of information they share there all the time is what's the age you think people first get their first leadership kind of supervisory role, and it's the answer is age 27 is the average, and then contrasted with that, but when do you get your first formal leadership training or leadership development experience? At what age?
40.
42 to 45.
Oh, nice. Those are too far off.
There's 15 years where people are doing leadership, but they're just figuring it out on their own. And one of the really amazing things about the Leadership Circle profile is it allows people to I see that, you'll see that and they're like, yeah, I can see you're scoring really high on this earlier version of leadership. And that's what we'd kind of expect because you've never gotten any training. But as people start to be developed or focus on their own development themselves, they start to move, and we can tie that to the same progression of, they were doing leadership as best as they could, but they're 30 years old, they've been doing it for 3 years, and they're just trying to think of, how do I be inspiring? I watched Jerry Maguire or something.
Yeah. How do I not
suck? On their own.
my whole thing, how do I not suck and come across as being a jerk every day of my life? Yeah. Now that's really cool. Now, how do these coaches and partners in your world make money? I mean, I know that you've got the program, you've got the coaches, you've got these partnerships, but how are they using what you're doing to make money on what they're doing so that partnership is a rinse and repeat for them?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of, like I said, there's like 14,000. So within that, there's different populations, but I'd say there's easy ones that aren't, they're a little different. So it's, someone works for a company, an organization, they have a training and development department, they're certified in our tools, and they're just using it internally. So they have an internal drive to do it. So they don't have that kind of sales perspective. I'd say when I joined this firm, there was almost an apprehension to talk about people as resellers. I think that part of that is because tying back to our mission, that's not really what our mission is, right? It's not to drive sales, it's to make an impact. And so there was some resistance to that, but I think it's because that's not how we want to see them. So I'd say fundamentally how we look at them and how they see themselves is they're coaches and they're consultants. So how they're making their money is they're selling their own consulting services. They're coaching to leadership development or change management or professional development, whatever. And so fundamentally, it's our partners are selling their own offer as consultants, and we're the engine that they can plug in to really give them credibility there, right? So there's, how many consultants do you know? There's an unlimited amount. You could go on LinkedIn and you just search consultant, you're going to get tens of thousands of results, because what is a consultant? But specifically in leadership consultant, if I'm doing leadership consulting, there's also so many different tools, and so the value that we really add there is that engine where they can kind of skip that step for credibility to say, hey, we're going to do this with your consulting. We use Leadership Circle because this is what it's going to do for this consulting conversation, and then they move on. They move into their, them as a consultant and what they're going to do, and so it kind of helps them to shortcut that part of the process in what they sell as consultants, because they can just say, we use the Leadership Circle profile because it's research validated. It's not just a good idea. There's so much data behind it. So that's why I've selected it from breadth of offers out there, and then they just talk about what they're going to do for those organizations as consultants.
Oh, that's really interesting. Kevin, I know that you've got a lot of experience in life sciences and some other industries. Do you have questions for Tom, or do you have comments on where those things are kind of aligning to what Tom's talking about?
It's interesting to hear Tom, like you just said, you don't want to talk about someone as a reseller. And it's interesting of like how quickly a partnership or even your partner's credibility goes out the window if you're not using the right language for the industry. Of that, I'm sure that your consultants, like they don't like to be thought of as resellers, and you don't want to call them partners, and that their clients, you want to make sure you use the right language. So I'm sure that as you're building your strategy, working with partners, just even the infrastructure and how you speak to them, let alone all the things that you do and how you enable them and your own offering, but the language needs to be very much industry specific. And I'm sure your credibility can go out the window pretty quickly if you don't have that credibility for an industry like yours.
Sure, and I'd say the interesting thing is there's kind of a shift or in positioning of they're not a reseller, but we need to keep in check that they do resell, and that's what I help them with as a partner manager, right? Is that might not be fundamentally what they are. Mm-hmm. Like they don't see themselves as someone that's trying to sell our product, but I know my burden as a channel partner manager is by understanding and appreciating that that's what they need to do with it. Have I provided or created all the tools and resources that would help them to manage that piece of what they need to do to be successful in the business that they do.
And I'm sure too that you've got some things that you've pulled along the way, because if you look at the traditional channels, because we're talking about back and forth, that a lot of that is done on feature functionality. It's done on percentage of margin. It's done on, like, if you're cybersecurity, like that, if you're a partner or reseller of cybersecurity, you've got infinite offers and you can kind of pick and choose based off of that. I'm sure that with your consultants, and not resellers, but the people who are taking your product to market, I'm sure it's a completely different value proposition. It's a completely different relationship you have with them, of not just pushing a percentage increase in functionality or whatever those things are to get mind share. That do you find your partners, is that a struggle with you, or is it more of making sure that they're out there in the field talking about your product, or what are some of the challenges of that little bit different than of a channel?
I think it's, if you look at an off-the-shelf product, we're talking like software as a service, for example, you have, let's just say Adobe Creative Cloud or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And it's people know what it is, and they're looking for the vendor that has the cheapest option, or it's going to give them the best bulk thing. Because ours is so integrally tied with the value of the coaching that you'll get with it, that's the biggest differentiator amongst our partnerships. Is a lot of people, let me say potential clients, the value of the coach or the coaching can make such a difference, and so that's what they need to sell first and foremost. Especially when you look at the breadth of across 14,000 people who's selling, there's a difference there. And there's people, and I think as you move towards the more successful end, that's what you'd see is the people that are more successful, they actually position us less as the integral part and position themselves more, but at the same time, they're leaning more heavily on us to back up and bolster that credibility for them. If our tool doesn't do what they've positioned it to do, then they're going to fail. But so they're not just putting like kind of one foot in or one toe in the water. It's they're all in on Leadership Circle. But the client might not ever even feel that, right? It's such an integral part, but they're so trusting that it's going to do what they have said it done, and the more they use it, that's usually how it goes. Is the more they use it, the more they just have this faith that that's going to work for them, and they can focus on their total offer.
You know what's funny about all this is that what you've just said right there is exactly the value propositions that that technology MSPs use.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's so funny. I mean, they're really all about, what can I do for you? We're going to provide this solution. I can improve your business. I can provide these outcomes for you in a way that you can't get from others. And it never really becomes about the technology they're reselling. It's more about the solution that they can provide. You and I have seen each other at a number of events, and it's so funny to me to watch you walk around at these channel and industry related, like the partnership events, because on the one hand, I can see that you're gathering great information, and on the other hand, you look a little perturbed. And it just totally cracks me up, because the things that you're having to solve are really similar, but the language and the things like that the talks and the best practices and all these things that you're having to kind of wade through to get those answers are just totally different. Are channels in leadership the same as channels in technology, and are they different? And what's your experience with all of that as you've kind of moved through that setting?
Sure. Yeah, I love that question. I'd say I'll tie it back to a question you asked earlier, and that I dodged a little bit. But it was, what's my background? My background. So I have a bachelor's in psychology, master's in marriage and family therapy. As I was going through my master's in marriage and family therapy, that's when I started in partnerships. Coincidentally, I was working at a leadership development company already. I saw the partnerships, and I realized there was tons of overlap. And the reason for that is not marriages, is marriage and family therapy, or is really systems theory. It's systems management and looking at systems, and the difference between marriage and family therapy and, let's say, just like psychology, we'll say, or mental health counseling, is those kinds of therapists really look at the individual and try to figure out what the problem or the challenge is, often in complete ignorance of the system that's around them, right? So you have a kid with I don't want to say anything. I don't want to get hung up in the comments on which thing I think. But there's an issue with a kid, and it's like the difference. I remember sitting in a group session from people from a bunch of different kinds of therapy that we were in a shared class, and there was several of us that were marriage and family therapists in there, and we're asking questions. Well, what about like the parents, and how often are they home, and are they still married, and whatever. And this person who's I think they're a mental health counselor, like, I'd never even think to ask about the system around this thing. And I think for me, I'll just tie that in, as that got me really interested in partnerships, because as I was almost coincidentally working in partnerships, I thought, man, I can apply all this same stuff. It all applies to partnerships, because it's not this partner that has a problem. It's what are the challenges that this kind of partner has, and how can we solve for that in the system, so that we can serve, there's one here, they represent 100x, and let's solve that same thing. And then I started to realize, this is what partnerships is. And I decided to make the switch. So before I finished my degree, I decided to jump both feet, or to jump with both feet in to partnerships, because I thought this is what it is. I more than helping just people, I really love figuring out the system and figuring out how do you fix that. And I think fundamentally, to me, that's what partnerships is is figuring out the entire system. There's not a partner, there's partners, and within those partners, there's different kinds of partners, and each of them has different needs. And when you service a partner network and assume everybody's the same, that's your first mistake. And so you need to be able to segment and parse them out and kind of group them together. But it's to understand what do they need from us as vendors so that we can best service their needs. And so when I go to these conferences and things, so often they're really heavily like, hey, we're all SaaS or we're all telecom or whatever. And I'm like, like it's what's underneath that. And so I kind of got to dig down, like the underlying message is right. But even their perspectives in servicing, let's say us as partner industry people, is they're not recognizing that there's different segments underneath us, but there are also commonalities. So they tend to hit the biggest ones. And if I wasn't so dedicated to trying to find the right information, I'd be alienated by the perspective of like, oh, this is all tech. And I'm like, well, it's not. Like, you just think is your only exposure has ever been to tech. I'll say one more thing and then I'll stop yakking. But I think one of the most transformational. So I attended a training at Miller Hyman on channel management, or with Miller Hyman, I should say, in Chicago. Several years ago, I don't know, 5 or 7 years ago, I attended they don't think they offer it anymore, but it was a distribution channel management course, executive course at Kellogg, or Northwestern University. And when I was in that group, that's the most where I thought, hey, I found my people here. Most of them were in manufacturing. They worked for Bosch, or they were working for like toy companies or whatever. But it was kind of like there was this understanding that there was an eclectic group of channel related, partnership related people in the room. And like, that was just so refreshing of, hey, we're all here. We're all trying to figure out how to get the most out of our partnerships. And maybe it was happenstance. There just wasn't a lot of tech people there, or maybe because the tech people are turned off when they hear distribution channel, they think physical goods. But it was like the content was amazing, and kind of sad they don't offer that program anymore. But for me, that was my first, like, oh, I can breathe out here and I can just ingest information.
That's awesome. And not one of those that you mentioned were technology companies. Okay, I'm going to pivot on you. I want you to be a futurist. And right now we've got AI hitting the mix. It's impacting everyone. I'm sure it'll impact your industry. So call your shot. Where does partnerships head from here?
I think partnerships moving forward, I think there will be tools and things to help us to talk about what I was just mentioning a little bit. Is I think AI will help us to categorize and identify key segments of partnership. It'll take information that maybe is manually processed by one person, and we can start leveraging it to say, where are there partners in our data that are acting similarly that we might not just notice manually, right? Or we can see those trends and things that will pull us up. I think at its core, partnership is always going to take some person understanding the objectives of the person that you're partnering, or the organization you're partnering with. I think that's where I see AI being really valuable, at least for me, is to, especially managing a network of 14,000 and growing, to say, hey, I'm only going to see some rising to the surface. Where can AI help me to like really say, hey, here's a segment that you don't seem to be engaging with. They're really similar to this person over here, or this company that's like a rock star partner. Let's try sending some of the same information to them, or automating that, right? And saying, yeah, if the behaviors are the same, let's start automating some of that. And if they engage, now I can do a personal reach out.
Makes sense. Now, is there a part to play for the partner automation platforms in the non-traditional partnership space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. Is it's really making it. Anything that can be done that helps me understand my partners better, particularly, like I said, from the data, I think that's going to be valued. Where you can't be everything to everybody, but you can be more to more people if you have ways to access those insights.
Cool. Okay, so the last question. We're out of time, but what I like to do is ask our guests the 3 things they should take away from the conversation here that are going to make the biggest impact on their partnerships and channels. What would those be for you?
The first and foremost for me in all my partner engagements is do I understand what the job is to be done with the partner? With any given partner, do I understand their value proposition, and what can I do to help them to meet it in terms of what they're getting from me?
That's
I think
an important one.
I think that's one that I learned kind of I've always known it, but I'd say that comes from experiences. Is if I'm giving them what I think they need, and I've never asked them, then that's a problem. So I'd say maybe that's my number 2 is making sure that you're sanity checking what you're getting, the solutions you're providing, that you've asked the partner, is this what you need?
Yeah.
And not just, this is what I've seen that you need. And a small alignment change would make it hit dead on a lot faster.
I love that. So last but not least, what's your 3rd one?
I think the 3rd one is by better understanding who they are or who we are to them, that we can best help them, and because we know who we are as a company, we know how we sell into the market as vendors, but really understanding what do they need from us, and recognizing that their offer might be different than ours is, even though they're working the same tools.
I love that, and you're trying to make their lives easier. Well, Tom, this has been a real pleasure as always. I love to chat with you, and long may that continue. Thanks to everyone that has participated or that has listened in today. Have a happy Halloween, and thanks again, Tom. We'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vaughn.
Take care. Bye.